Yo guys, welcome back again today for another segment of Black news, African descent news all around the world. Excuse my voice a little bit. I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's wintertime and my voice is just coming back, so hopefully you guys can understand me. But let's get right into it today. Let's talk about some black news. So, Huntington Bank denied a black man from cashing his paycheck. I'm pretty sure Huntington Bank is based in Ohio from where I'm from. I'm from Columbus, and this man is in Brooklyn, Ohio. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm correct, Huntington is based, and it's a banking company from Ohio. So they denied his paycheck. Paul McCown went to cash his check at a Huntington Bank in Brooklyn, Ohio, after working at a job that he just started for 3 weeks. And he didn't have an account at the bank, so he gave them a social security card, and he also gave them his license, and then the bank asked for a thumbprint. And that's part of policy, so he gave them the thumbprint as well. And he did all three of those things, and his check was denied. And his check was around $1,000, and his check was denied because they thought that it was fraud. They thought that he was making too much money, or I guess it was too big of an amount. I mean, I don't think close to $1,000 is unreasonable and unthinkable in 3 weeks, but you know, I guess the teller thought that. And the bank teller told him that it was fraudulent. And after speaking back and forth, Paul left. So Paul and the teller had words back and forth about why it wasn't fraudulent, and eventually Paul just left. The black man just left. And when he left, he went to his truck, and he was met at his truck with Brooklyn, Ohio police, which handcuffed him and basically told him that he was under arrest because the bank called 911 and reported that there were fraudulent activities and that his check was fraudulent, right? So come to find out, the check was actually legit and was verified by his employer, but also the teller stated that he didn't call to verify with the employer before he basically accused this black man of trying to cash a fraudulent check, right? Now Huntington Bank says that in that area there's a high activity of fraudulent activity going on in, I guess, Brooklyn, Ohio, and around banks around that area. But the bank also says that the teller should have called and verified the employment of the black man before he called the police and accused the black man of fraudulent behavior. So Paul states that all he wants is an apology and feels like he was racially profiled. And I think that these occasions happen a lot, especially when you're somebody that's trying to get your life back on track. I don't know the young man from, Paul or Jim or whoever it might be, but I know that when I looked at him and viewed him, he has locks. He's a black man. He's walking into a bank. He doesn't have a bank card. He doesn't have a account with Huntington Bank. And I think that some people in certain areas can automatically stereotype people just because other people are doing bad things. So what do you guys think about this black man being stereotyped, and also how his check was claimed to be fraudulent, even though the teller didn't even call to try to verify if he worked for the employer or not? What do you guys think about that? So on to good old China, right? So China will start fishing in Somali shores this month, right? So Somalia has granted 31 fishing licenses to 31 Chinese vessels to exploit tuna and tuna-like species off the coast of Somalia. Somalia, if you guys don't know, has the longest coastline in Africa, and Somalia is hoping to tap into seafood sector economy growth, right? So they're doing it to try to grow their seafood or their fishing sector in Somalia. These vessels are associated with the China Overseas Fishers Association, and they are a distance water trawling group created in 2012 to promote the East Asians' competitive fishing edge abroad or around the world, right? So like I just stated, starting this month, the ships will be allowed to operate for 1 year in Somali waters, and this agreement will also allow an automatic renewal for the 31 Chinese vessels to fish offshores for an additional year after the first year is up. So when the first year is up this year, 2019, probably because this is the last month of the year, the last couple of days for 2019. So when 2020 hits, as long as everything okay, then China can fish, or those 31 vessels can fish in Somali waters for another year. That's part of the contract. Now, small-scale fishing will be protected in this agreement as well, so Somali fishermen can still fish. The Chinese vessels will not be permitted to operate between certain areas closer to shore, and that's to ensure that the local Somali population and people, fishermen, that are more obviously on the smaller side, smaller scale of business, can still fish and can still be competitive within the Somali fish market and food market, right? So the Chinese vessels will also have to declare their positions, weight of the catch or weight of the fish that they caught, and the species that they caught on board. So obviously all this data is probably going to be used to make sure that there's not overfishing, to make sure that they're properly following Somali guidelines, right? They're in Somali waters. So those things will be used for probably data and to make sure that the Chinese vessels are doing what they say that they're doing, right? Good business. So Somalia is known for their abundance of fish and diverse tuna species such as yellowfin, right? Big-eyed tuna and long-tailed tuna. This sector has remained untapped due to the lack of regulations in Somalia, poor infrastructure in Somalia as far as fishing, right? And the sea industry, and cultural preference to land meat instead of seafood, right? So basically, a lot of Somali people probably prefer land meat, right? More than they actually do seafood. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Somali people that like seafood. But I would say the majority that I know, especially probably like land meat more than they like seafood. And that's just my, my perception. By authorizing foreign permits, Somalia is trying to, or has hopes to, make the sector sustainable, generate revenue, and also contribute to national and international trade, right? So Somalia in more recent modern years has never had a large domestic industrial fishing fleet and has mostly used foreign fleets to undertake fishing for Somalia. In West Africa, however, Chinese vessels have been accused of depleting stocks, using OPEC measures to obtain licenses, and threatening the livelihood of fishermen, right? Beijing, back in China, increasingly aware of these practices, has cracked down by revoking the licenses of fishing firms conducting illegal activities in Africa. Some Somali citizens worry that foreign companies will overfish the waters and leave little to no fish for the local fishing communities in Somalia. And this was one of the reasons, if a lot of people don't know, for Somali pirates in the past, because, basically foreign countries and fishermen were coming into Somalia and fishing in their waters, and obviously that's what was one of the reasons that created Somali pirates, right, in the more recent days or more recent years. And we must note that Chinese vessels were granted by the Somali government to have armed guards on board their ships. So the Chinese companies and the Chinese ships are allowed to have Chinese armed bodyguards and security on their ships as well. So what do you guys think about China and Somalia? Do you think that was a good move that Somalia let 31 Chinese vessels come in to help develop the fishermen or the fishing economy in Somalia and also to develop that sector? Or do you think that China is basically using their power again to do whatever they want, or they're writing contracts that maybe don't have the best benefit for African people or black people around the world, right? And in Somalia, what do you guys think? Let me know. Let me know, my Somali people especially. Let me know what you think. So on to the next thing. Let's go up to North Africa from Somalia and let's talk about Sudan, right? So the Sudan president, Bashir, pledges to reform after deadly protests, right? So in Sudan, protests have entered their fifth day on Monday, which was yesterday, right? And President Bashir vowed to make real reforms to provide a decent life for citizens, right? This is due to the government tripling the price of bread, right? Economics, right? With South Sudan succeeding and becoming its own country, it also took 3/4 of its oil reserves with it. So when South Sudan broke off from Sudan, when it was all Sudan, and now it's South Sudan has or took 3/4 of the oil reserves that Sudan had, right? The value of the pound against the dollar has recently hurt the economy in the country as well. With these given factors, protests have arose in different cities and leadership structures have been questioned in Sudan. Doctors and hospital workers also staged a walkout on Monday morning. They also wanted the president to immediately step down, and the committee of doctors state that the uprising by the Sudanese people shows this, right? The walkout was planned by professionals from various sectors on Sunday, and they called for citizens to protest and hit the streets or the city streets. Surrounding cities and the capital of Sudan, right, which is Khartoum, right, were affected by the strikes. Bashir is expected to visit cities south of Khartoum today, which is today on Tuesday. He's supposed to go to cities south of Khartoum and talk to the people there and citizens there. In some cities, citizens blocked streets, burned tires, and protested for a government regime change. Police armed with batons dispersed some protests in some cities, and 8 people have died in the demonstrations, but some say the death toll is much higher than 8 people. Political science professors say that the main reason for the protests are political failures of government, errors, and bad management, as well as high prices. Now, some superpowers in the world say that the Sudan government has hate crimes against humanity on its hands, but the Sudan government says that outside superpowers promote propaganda and unrest in the country. So what do you guys think about Sudan and the president and what's happening in the government in Sudan? The price of living is going up. Food obviously is going up. The economy is maybe not doing as well as it once was. And a lot of citizens feel that there needs to be a government change as far as power as the president and just the whole government regime in Sudan. So, yo, guys, that's the news of Afro people or African descent people, black people all around the world. Always like, subscribe, and follow me on all my social medias. YouTube, which you're on here right now, but tell a friend. Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, SoundCloud, and Facebook is all Afric Network. And yo, guys, until next time, each one teach one. Always stick together, always learn from each other, and peace, one love.
What's up, what's up?
Hey.
Shalom.
What up?
Hi.
African.